Welcome to the Germinate podcast, where agriculture, business, and innovation take root and thrive. I'm Joe Sampson, and with nearly 2 decades of experience in agricultural equipment and scaling businesses, I'm here to bring you actionable insights, inspiring stories, and strategic advice. Whether you're an industry veteran or just starting out, this podcast is your guide to cultivating ideas, expanding your knowledge, and growing your venture. So let's get started and germinate your path to success. Natalie, welcome aboard. I appreciate you coming on.
I am so honored to be here. I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
Yeah, me too. I guess the power of LinkedIn,
Right?
I think, is how we got connected here. So, yeah, tell everybody about yourself. You have your own podcast. It's called what? Go ahead.
It's called the Discover Ag Podcast. Yes, it has been quite the journey. My life has taken a little bit of a turn in the last 10 years. I was actually working as a full-time pharmacist living in Montana before I met my husband. And then when we got married and I relocated down here to Nebraska, where we have a cattle ranch, we're kind of rural, so I did not end up using my pharmacy degree. And I thought, why don't I give social media a try? I actually started a direct-to-consumer beef business to sell beef from our ranch. And once you get dip your toes into the world of social media, I just think a lot of different opportunities present themselves. And as you alluded to, it kind of brought me over the years, journey through different things, brought me to my podcast, starting my podcast a couple years ago.
Yeah, I love it. You call yourself the Discos, right? Or you call your audience the Discos.
Yes, one of our listeners actually came up with that because Discover Ag, you cut off half of the letters, you end up with disco. And so one of our themes is a little bit of a disco ball, and it just all somehow oddly works.
It works. We were talking earlier. It's like, it's super entertaining. It's a really good show. There's you guys kind of, I think your theme is you kind of branch agriculture with pop culture and talk about all the things that are going on in the pop culture world, but kind of mix in your ag background, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal. I think at the heart of our mission when we first launched it was to essentially make agriculture cool again. We were
Yeah.
seeing a lot of people talk about food and farming and different things in the headlines, especially with the whole MAHA movement and kind of this shift in focus on health and wellness just as a nation over the last couple of years. But we never saw farmers represented in that conversation, at least not a majority of it and not continually. And not that it like rubbed us the wrong way, but we just thought, why not add a farmer's voice to it, right? We can speak to a lot of these topics from firsthand boots on the ground experience. But at the same time, you say farming podcast and no one wants to tune into that. And so,
Yeah.
we really felt this call to kind of highlight agriculture, food, and the way something that is involved in every person's lives 3 times a day, but make it fun and lighthearted and entertaining from them. And also important, which is why we focus on the top trending topics. So we're not covering things that you've never heard of. We're covering a headline or a reel or a soundbite that you probably saw scrolling and didn't, had your own questions about it or didn't know much about it. And so, yeah, I love it. We were talking before, it makes it really easy to have something to talk about because, man, food and farming is in the headlines quite frequently nowadays. It's kind of wild.
Yeah. Well, here's where I want to go. I was scrolling, I can't remember where. I think it might have been LinkedIn or Twitter or something this morning. And there was a family digging a hole this is going to make sense here in a second, I promise you. But there was a family digging a hole in the beach, when you go to the beach with your kids and you start digging this giant hole. I want to say they were in Europe somewhere in an English speaking, whether it would be Scotland, Ireland. Anyway, they were digging this giant hole and they were filming it, putting it on TikTok or Instagram or whatever. They leave, it's this huge hole. They leave the next morning. The local news is out there saying there's this giant abyss in the beach that came, like aliens came down and a rock hit it. And the reason why I'm bringing that up to you is because, like, nothing in the media we believe now you can't believe the media. I don't know how they get away with this stuff, but it's like, really, you guys think an alien came down and put this hole in? And we're talking about that kind of as a result of your podcast, because there's so many stories revolving food and glyphosate and the MAHA movement and all this stuff. And you're like, what? You tell us right now, I guess, what what part of any of this is real or true, and how do you find the truth, I guess?
Yeah, it's so fun you brought up that story because I actually think it's a great depiction of
Yeah.
the world we live in, which is really wild. But it makes me think of something we just covered on the podcast a couple weeks ago. There is this reel that completely went viral. I mean, I don't remember the numbers from it, but it was very, very large. I'm talking, millions of views, shared probably 10 to 15,000 times. Like we're talking very big metrics in the social media world. And it was a food influencer talking about Wagyu beef. And she was talking about how terrible Wagyu beef is, some of the things Wagyu beef is fed, just really like a lot of actually all of it was false. So a lot of fear mongering and misinformation about Wagyu beef. And so we talked about it on our podcast, but then we also brought on a Wagyu rancher just to have them debunk a little bit of information. And it's just wild to me how convicted this food influencer was about Wagyu beef, and yet she has never raised it. She has never, set
Right.
foot on a ranch in general, probably a farm. And she goes out there and says this information, and hers is the one that takes off. Like hers is the reel that pops off, and now all these people have this misinformation, and that happens more than you would think. The information people are sharing, maybe there are seeds of truth. We talk about that a lot on the podcast, how like, yes, this portion they said is true, but this is not true. Like this is completely wild. Like we just covered a person that was in the grocery store talking about wild caught salmon versus farm raised salmon. And some of the
Yeah.
things he was talking about had seeds of truth to it. But then a lot of it is just, you know, developed and emphasized for social media. And it really stinks as a consumer because then, like you said, you just don't know what to trust anymore.
Yeah, there's all these stories, and which that's a good point. Whichever one gets popular, it's like we all tend to believe it. And there's so many examples of this. I mean, one of them really is probably this whole like Maha movement. And like I think we were talking earlier when we talked way back when, but like my wife and I and our whole family, we're into fitness, we're into what we eat, and there's this big buzz around creatine these days. I don't know if you've seen it. I'm sure everybody's seen it, right? Creatine now, babies should be taking it, grandma should be taking it. Now it's a well-studied supplement for sure. And I've been taking creatine for like 5 years. So I mean, I have proof concept, but now it's like, no, 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 don't take the prescribed amount, take double, take triple for your brain health. And so everybody's doing it. Like I have my 80-year-old mother taking creatine. I have my 80-year-old mother-in-law taking creatine. My kids are all on it. And I'm like, I'm not smart. Like I graduated college from I got a 2.5 GPA from UNI, and I drank beer and chased girls. That was my degree. But I believe a lot of this stuff. You know what I mean? It's hard not to because it's so in your face, whether it's my algorithm or whether it's, I don't know, what, but these things catch fire and you just jump onto them. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm in agriculture and I feel like I get caught up in a lot of things in
yeah,
different industries. I mean, we're in cattle, we're in beef, but you see other things and people are just so convicted and there's so much social agreement with it. I actually listened to a really, really interesting podcast the other day talking about how we as humans are psychologically influenced to learn and the way social media is built taps on all of them, right? So it taps on the attractiveness. Like we like to learn from people that we're, visually like to watch. We like to learn from people where we see mass amounts are agreeing. So when you do have a real pop off, whether it's true or not, if you see the high numbers of likes or shares, that feeds into like our psychological belief that like, oh, it must be true if this many people like it. Like there's so many different things that are built into social media to sway our learning that it's just really, really wild. And like you said, we're starting to see, you know, movements and conversations of the extremes be the popularity. I just saw an article we might cover on the podcast that was talking about carnivore for your baby. And I'm like, hold up.
hey,
This
yeah,
is wild. Like even as a
right.
cattle rancher, as someone who consumes animal protein all the time and who does believe animal protein is like one of the most nutrient dense things we can put in our body, we're going pretty far when we're putting babies on a carnivore diet. Like there is benefit in other things too. And so, yeah, it's just wild how influenced we are today.
Yeah. This was on your podcast. I can't remember when, but you'll probably remember. But the city of Denver, Colorado came out and had these wild claims about, and you can talk more about it because I'm going to forget, but what were some of the highlights? You,
Yeah,
you
we
remember that.
just covered this a couple weeks ago. So Denver started an initiative as a citywide plan to basically decrease their carbon footprint. I think they joined or made maybe pledges or something that, in 10 years, 15 years that they would have carbon reduction. And so now they obviously have to come up with a plan and steps to implement that so they can hit some of the metrics. And they, had a lot of do's you should do for as residents of the city and a lot of don'ts you should do. And one of them was moving towards a plant-based diet. And so we talked a little bit about that podcast just because, well, obviously it's really wild to see, one person or one committee trying to roll out these initiatives and telling mass amounts of people what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing, especially when it comes to diet, especially when it, as I just said, comes to removing something that is extremely nutrient dense from your diet. And has a lot of misunderstanding around the carbon footprint of it itself. So, yeah, it's just really, we're in such a wild world. I mean, people
Yeah.
really, it's good that we care so much about the environment. It's good that we care so much about our health and wellness. But at the end of the day, we have to remember to check some of the sources we're getting things from and remember, the social media, just because it is viral doesn't mean it's true. And just because, one person is convicted of it doesn't mean necessarily you need to implement that or that needs to be true for you and your household.
Yeah, it could just be a family digging a hole in the sand, guys. That's really that's
Exactly.
the
I
moral
love
of the
that.
story.
It
I mean,
could just to be a family digging a hole in the beach as a
right.
family. Exactly.
That's really, I mean, it's okay to use our brains and not, you
Yep.
don't have to go to your phone for every piece of information. I think, millennials get a bad rap. You're a millennial. I'm not quite a millennial. I'm older than that, but my wife is, so don't worry. But the millennial generation use their phone for everything. We all do now. We're
Mhm.
all so like, if you want to find, I remember going to like bars with my buddies back in the day, and we'd be like, how many home runs did Mark McGuire hit in 19? And you'd have to like sit there and think about it.
Yep.
Or, what's the longest river in the world? We'd all play Trivial Pursuit. Now it's like, hang on, I'll get you the answer in 2 seconds. And I that's great. There's such power in that, but also using our own brains, we're like, and now with AI and ChatGPT that's scraping the internet for everybody's information, it's so easy for a news channel to run something totally false that says some meteor hit this beach and created, and there's an alien going to pop out of it. It's like, come on, man, what's up here? Let's stop. Let's use our brains again. I don't
Yep.
know how we get everybody to do that, but hopefully listening to podcasts like yours where you're kind of debunking some of these funny little myths that are out there, especially around food, which is super popular.
Yeah, hopefully, like you said, I mean, we try not to make it too educational. We like to have a lot of fun with it too, so that you're enjoying what you're listening to. But yeah, at the end of the day, we just want people to be better informed so that they're not influenced and so that they can make, better decisions for themselves and feel more safe when they're in the grocery store or better when they're picking different options for their kids or basically know when they're scrolling social media, have some sort of foundation that they can be like, maybe, like that might not, like as you said, that might just be a family digging a hole in the sand. I don't know if I need to overthink that one or, change my entire life to fit that model.
Yeah. Well, let's get into some of the myths that are not, maybe not myths. Maybe this is the truth. I don't know. Maybe it is an actual alien that came down and put a hole. We're going to ruin that analogy to death, by the way. Um, you guys did a 3-part series. I talk about this a lot on our podcast. In fact, we had somebody from Stein Seed on the other day. Genius guy. Like the genetics in hybrids with corn and soybeans specifically is just like next level type smart. It's crazy. Um, so you guys did a 3-part series on like glyphosate and GMO, all the things we talk about now, super popular. I think you had somebody on there that was totally against GMOs. You had somebody on there that was kind of in the middle or maybe for GMOs. And then you guys kind of formulated your own opinions on this. So
Yep.
give us kind of a recap of that.
Yeah, so I would be shocked if there is a listener tuning in that has not scrolled, heard something about, seen a headline around glyphosate and how it is absolutely destroying the planet and killing us slowly, and we need to avoid it all costs. And usually in that conversation is also the GMOs. So that's why we
Yep.
kind of looped that in. And this is something we encounter.
Great idea, by the way.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is something that the discos have been asking for a really long time is for us to talk about this. And we just couldn't quite put our finger on the right way to talk about it. And then finally we decided, well, we'll do this 3-part series. It felt too big to just talk about as an article, because when you on our, Thursday podcast where we cover the 4, sometimes 5 top trending topics, we're touching on something for about 10 minutes, right? We're basically letting you know this is going on, and then we're giving our thoughts, maybe sometimes some facts or information, or sometimes we choose lighter hearted articles. So you just laugh for 10 minutes or whatever it is. But you basically have about 10 minutes, maybe 15, to give your thoughts on this topic, this headline. And to do that with glyphosate just felt absurd. And so we knew we couldn't cover it on a Thursday podcast. And even just covering it in one podcast felt too much, right? It's like you have people against it, you have people for it, you have such strong feelings on it emotionally. And there's a lot of science to dive into too. So we were like, okay, well, if we do this 3-part series, we could, as you mentioned, bring on someone that's completely against it and really represent the side that feels very strongly that we as a nation need to move away from this chemical because it is having very detrimental effects to us. We will honor that conversation. We will sit in it for an entire hour, and we will let that expert present all the different things from the emotional side of it to the science, data, and numbers side of it. And then on the flip side, the next week, we're going to follow it up and do the exact opposite. We're going to have someone who comes on and feels very strongly that this is one of the best tools we have in agriculture, that this is one of the most safest, actually, chemicals that farmers have at their grasp right now. And this is what it would mean if we took it away, and really have, again, that same conversation from the science and data that is supporting the use of glyphosate. And then we ended up looping in the 3rd episode, which was us talking about it, because we thought, gosh, we're going to sit down with these 2 people and we're going to kind of let them dominate the conversation a little bit. Like, obviously we're interviewing, we'll mix in a little bit of our thoughts, but for the most part, you're letting that person speak. And we thought, well, gosh, if we disagree, we don't want to get in an argument. If we really support, like, we want to talk about that more. And so we're like, okay, for the 3rd episode, we're going to basically give our thoughts after we have sat down with experts on both sides and say, like, who moved us, who swayed us, who had really valid points, who kind of lost us and didn't necessarily have valid points. And so it was really fun to do. It was really, really well received. And I learned a lot, which is always good at the end of the day too.
What'd you learn? What's your take?
This is just my personality, but I am someone who loves to continually push and follow science. So I am not someone that will ever sit into one standpoint or viewpoint and just that is my truth. I love to continue to form my opinion based off all the latest information that's coming out. Like with glyphosate, they just did release a study in June that I think we need to maybe talk about a little bit more. It was done on rats and mice, and it had some, negative things to go with it to kind of point to, like, maybe this does have some health effects. But when we sat down with the 2 experts, there was very, very little data and science to support the negative sides of glyphosate from a health standpoint, compared to the plant scientists we interviewed from the positive side. So I believe that glyphosate, and this might trigger some people, but I believe that it is safe for us to consume in the amount that we are exposed to. I believe that farmers are continually using very stringent methods to minimize any extra effects that come from it. I believe that they are using it properly and responsibly when it comes to agriculture. And I do think it is right now where we're at in society a very important tool that if we, again, want to look at replacing it, not against it, but to take that tool away from farmers without giving them another tool that is just as effective and just as safe, we can't do that. So right now I support the use of glyphosate, but I'm always open to reading a new study that comes out that, maybe debunks that or questions that. And I am open to investing money, time, energy, and resources into finding a replacement for glyphosate if that is what we as a nation decide to do. And something, again, that just supports farmers at the end of the day.
That's a super intelligent answer. And it's like, it's so simple too. Like, I wish we as a country were a little bit more like that, and that's my point on critical thinking. Like, let's just get back to, let's have an actual, use your brain on these things. And, when you do that with glyphosate, it can trigger a lot of people because, my gosh, it's, everybody's getting autism now and everybody's depressed and anxious and filled with antidepressants, and this is 100% glyphosate. And that's not true. I mean, there might be a reason that might be a little bit of it, but there's maybe a million other reasons as well. So super intelligent answer. I pulled some stats here. Um, which during COVID, I went down these weird rabbit holes and read these books, and I read like RFK Jr.'s book. Have you read that?
I have
It's
not, but
crazy,
I
by the
do
way.
love a
Okay,
good like conspiracy rabbit hole. Like I love to venture down some wild things. So I'm kind of excited.
dude, I was convinced the world was flat. Like what every other myth out there. I was like, yep, all of it.
Yeah.
I'm totally convinced of this. But anyway, I've calmed myself down. I got off all that, but um. These stats I think are true because Google told me. So, of course, you believe it. But 1 in 31 kids now are diagnosed with autism. In the 80s, that was 1 in 10,000. And that's like crazy, alarming, scary numbers. I have two kids. Neither one of them, they have all the same thing teenagers have. They're anxious. They get depressed. And we all had that when we were kids too. But I do believe probably some of it is the food we eat, but I also believe there's also like 25 other reasons that are making kids the way they are, and part of it is these things right here that we talked about before that nobody can stop looking at
Yeah.
and getting information thrown at them, and so yeah, I mean you already kind of answered it on what I was gonna kind of ask you, but I don't know what my question is here other than it's an interesting observation. We should all use our own brains to kind of think about this.
No,
Am I
I
wrong?
think I'm
Am I
glad you
wrong?
brought it up. So I've actually been diving really deep. I've read about three different books. Well, read three different books now on technology and its effect, especially on the younger generation, the anxious generation, as the kids are being called. I also have a teenager, and so I see firsthand kind of some of the effects. And I agree. I mean, I remember being that age and struggling with some of the mental mental health, right? But not to the extent that I see this generation struggling with. And I do think that we are really fooling ourselves if we do not uh, give as much culpability to social media and technology as we do to the other things we're putting into our body. And listen, I totally agree. I think two things can be true at once. Like, I think I can say I support the use of glyphosate right now because it is the best tool we have as farmers and it is the safest chemical we have as farmers. Like, if you asked a farmer to use some of the other chemicals in the lineup, if they took away glyphosate, they'd say no. Like, I don't feel comfortable or safe going to that. Like, this is the one chemical that I feel safest using on the farm. That can be true at the same time saying, like, we need to limit exposure to it. We need to clean up the food system. We need to make sure we are putting healthy food in our body. We need to decrease processed food. We need to eat better whole food. Like, all of that can be true in the same conversation. And I think that's the problem with social media is it's so black and white. You have to if you're for this, you're against this. And
Yeah.
if you take a stance on this, that means you also have to agree with X, Y, and Z. And I just don't think that is like a healthy mindset to have as humans. And I don't think it's healthy to have such limiting conversations around so many different things when I think, as I said, two things can be true at the same time.
Hey, folks, let's pause the podcast for a second to talk about one of the companies making the Germinate podcast possible. Want to give a huge thanks to GBGI. Here's Mark Adams.
Thanks, Joe. At our shop in Chardon, Ohio, every part we build is made with precision. From the CNC machining to the final inspection, we don't rush because we know your customers can't afford failure. If you're a dealer or OEM who wants reliability built in, give us a look. GBGI, built to spec, built to last. Learn more at gbgiusa.com. GBGI, grow with us.
We're all sort of slowly becoming our own gods instead of giving all of our fears and worries and troubles away to the one that actually did create us. To me, that's very, very, very important. And if we can all get back to that, it's so, enlightening, and it fills you up and it makes you feel like I'm okay. Like I'm not this weird, abnormal little anxious kid. Like God's got my back. Thank God for that. And
Yeah.
I think there's a generation, I know like my daughter and her generation are slowly getting back into Christianity. The sermon that was preached at our church last week was all about this. And I'm like, yes, let's go. This is what we need. Let's be more like Elijah. That guy was a badass.
Yep.
And we forget he was in the Bible, like taking on all these anti-Christian people. Like, let's be more like him. He was a tough dude. Let's do this.
Yeah, I'm so happy you brought that up. I wholeheartedly agree. And it is positive to see. I think there's been some really great statistics of the increase of different religions and, like you said, different generations kind of circling back. And there are good things about the younger generation too. I mean, I think they're at the lowest consumption of alcohol. Like, teen
Yeah.
pregnancy is at the lowest right now. A lot of people are like, well, yeah, that's because they're not going out and socializing like they're at home on their phone. So like there's some negative implements, but they're also, it's an interesting generation. They're kind of carving out to make different choices than some of the generations before them, and with different substances and uses. And, there's positive things too. So it's exciting.
I was watching. There was nothing on TV, so my wife and I watched Dazed and Confused the other night, which is like one of my all-time favorite movies. Have you ever seen that movie?
I have
Of
not, but
course.
I know what you're talking about.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
Uh-uh.
Oh, stop. You got to watch it. It's great. But there's a line in the movie where it takes place in the 70s in Austin, Texas. And there's a line in the movie where they're like, well, the 50s were obviously awesome. But they're saying like every other generation is the cool generation. Or no, they were like the 50s obviously sucked. The 60s were sweet. The 70s obviously sucked. Maybe the 80s are going to be cool. And so there are these myths that, every generation has dealt with these same types of things.
Yep.
We don't really realize it, but we're going to be okay, folks. It's okay. It's
100%.
it's not that pressing, but let's dive into a couple more stories that I think are important. And then we'll kind of let things roll. But you recently went on a European trip. You went to, where'd you go? France? Portugal, that's right.
Yes,
Sorry.
I had a blast. It was great.
How long ago was this? A couple weeks?
June.
June.
Yes,
okay.
a couple months.
The whole point of why you guys brought this up on your podcast, because there's this myth going around of when you go to Europe, you can eat all the food you want. You don't feel stuff. It doesn't taste like Windex like it does here. I've been to Europe like many times, 20 probably. I'll tell a quick little story. Okay, the first time I went to Europe I went to Paris, and I was in my 20s. And I get there, get off the plane, start having a few pops, and had a couple more pops. And, when you go over Europe, you kind of have jet lag, and kind of had a couple more pops. And then before you know it, we just went back to our hotel, and you're so extremely tired that first day. I went to bed. I just remember waking up being like, oh, I remember going to bed like, oh, I'm going to feel so crappy. And I woke up and I didn't. I felt pretty good. And so I've always had this, once again, the family digging a hole on the beach or the alien meteorite. I've always had this myth that like, yeah, every time I go to Europe, I feel like $1,000,000. And it's probably just me and kind of getting maybe a little bit red pilled, but tell everybody about your whole, disco theme on this. And I think it's a super cool one because a lot of people talk about this.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
so the reason we covered this is there was a TikTok that went viral of a girl that says she essentially mails over her groceries from Italy because she is allergic to American food and she can only eat this Italian food. And so she does unboxings. And again, you have to take for face value what she's sharing. But apparently, she's spending about $500 on a grocery box. In that, when we covered it, it was like eggs, some milk, a couple different vegetables and fruit. And so it's very kind of this very unrealistic thing for most average families to do, but painting this picture that you need to be afraid of American food and that European food is so much better. And it's obviously not just that reel or TikTok. That is a rhetoric you scroll. I feel like you see that all the time, kind of as you allude to. I can eat dairy over there. I can't eat it here. I can eat bread over there. I can't eat it here. Like there's this very, even when it comes to regulation and policy, a lot of people will say that European has better food policy than America, right? So there's just this general perception that Europe is doing food right and America is doing food wrong. And again, two things can be true at the same time, right? I do think that Europe has some really great things about this. And this is what I talked about on the podcast because I said, actually, I'm just coming off of a trip from Europe. And there are some things that I think are really great over there. They do really, really well. Like for breakfast, they, have meat and cheese. They have animal proteins out, and it is part of the daily diet. Here in America, me and my husband eat that way. We eat sausage usually most mornings with eggs. Like we have an animal protein to start our day every single day. And so for me, it wasn't that much different. But I think for the average American, you're not necessarily getting a high protein breakfast, right? You're getting something. You're getting coffee. You're getting something from the drive-through. You are getting croissants, which actually Europe does a ton. I was like, they're breakfast is a dessert table also. Like, let's not forget that there's a lot of things up there that aren't healthy either.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's just interesting. I think a lot of here's what my whole thing with Europe versus America, because it's too convoluted to give a blanket statement for me. There are things that they do better. There are things that I think we do better. They have some policies I like. They have some policies I hate. Like, would I want to go to European's food system? No. I think the EU regulations are very, very stringent on farmers and agriculture. And if you actually talk to someone over there that is growing food, I think there are some very hard things about growing food. They actually import a lot of food too. So I think there's just a lot of things to take into conversation. But what I think happens when people get kind of to your effect, point, this placebo effect where they're like, I went over there and I felt so great. I think you're forgetting the entire big picture. And the entire big picture is that you are on vacation, you are less stressed, you're more relaxed, you're excited, you're happier. You're out, probably moving a lot, walking throughout the day. I mean, the amount of steps we put on when we were in Portugal was insane compared to
It's
the
insane,
activity
yeah.
level that I have at home, right? You're outside most of the day too, compared to a lot of people who go to work, sit at their desk, come back home. So there's all these differences. And then when it comes to the diet, I think depending on your baseline diet, you may actually go over to Europe and feel better, because if you are the average American that does eat out quite a bit, that does go through the drive-thrus, that maybe is having a heavier, sad American diet, right? More processed food than whole foods. When you go to Europe, you probably are up leveling and you probably are eating better food that does feel better to your body. For me, when I went over there, I did not feel much of a difference. But my husband, our household, we eat fairly healthy. So for me, I just didn't experience that much of a difference. But I think my baselines were very, very similar.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think they also take their time a little bit more over there.
Oh,
Like,
for
it's different
sure.
by,
I mean, there are siestas. You don't eat until like 7. Like, you can't get dinner
Right.
reservations before
Right.
7.
Right.
And here in
It's
America,
weird to
we're
eat.
just in a completely different culture. So yeah, there are things I love about Europe and the food system. But to say that they're doing it 100% better than Americans farmers, like, I don't know. I know too many American farmers. I am American farmer, and I know that we're also doing a good job with our food system too. And I think here's my last little tangent I'll go on. I think people forget a lot about the very many steps we have in America, from the farm to the grocery store shelves. And I think one of the big things that I do agree with a lot of people on is that the processing, the manufacturing, the big food of America, we have a lot of changes to make there, right? So I believe America's potato farmers are doing a really, really good job. And potato chips and Lay's is not the fault of, and the health implications, I guess, from eating a bag of potato chips is not the fault of the American farmer. The health consequences come after some of the vegetables and produce leave the farm. A lot of the things we're doing to it when we process it is, not good.
Yeah. Well, we have teenagers and we have kids and they have activities, and you're driving them around and you're going to this event and that event. And before you know it, you're like, oh yeah, we got to eat. Let's hurry up and eat something really quick. And it's just different over in Europe because they take their time a little bit more. I'm not saying one is better than the other.
Right. And to your point,
it's
like,
just different.
convenience is a good thing. Like, to get rid of
Convenience
convenience
matters, yeah.
completely. I mean, that's why you see America has the food system we have, because we are a society of convenience. And until we learn to value other things over than that, we will continue to see fast foods pop up. We will continue to see fast foods be a number one, source for a lot of people, because it is convenient and easy. And again, two truths can be same. I don't think that's a bad thing. Our family, we're very rural, so the amount of times we go through a drive-through and have fast food is very, very minimal. But the times we do, I'm glad we have that option. I'm glad it's there for us. Like, I don't want to just shut down fast foods across America. I don't think that's the solution either. So again, people get so into like the extremes of like, we have to stop eating ultra processed foods, get rid of the middle of the grocery store, get rid of fast foods. And it's like, in moderation, some of these things are okay. Like the amount of, I have McDonald's once or twice a year, and that's not what's going to put me on my deathbed at the end of this, So like, why take that away? Some of these joys we have. I'm actually on carnivore right now for the podcast. We're interviewing someone on carnivore. And so we thought it'd be really fun to like, quote, fun to do the diet. So we have like personal experience. And the things I am learning about my relationship with food and food being like having it as a pleasure or some of these things. Like I have such a different perspective on food after going carnivore, and I've only been on carnivore for 5 days. So like I just think that these extreme people that think all of our problems will be solved if we just revert back to living like we were in the 1910s, like I just don't agree with it.
Yeah. How do you feel on carnivore 5 days in?
Again, I think my baseline foundation of a diet wasn't terrible enough that I just am one of those people that'll be like, carnivore revolutionized my life. I feel so much better. I I don't know, I don't feel that much different. I'm only 5 days in, but I don't feel like I'm not noticing anything where like, man, I'm waking up not tired anymore, or like I have more energy throughout the day. Like none of that. I also don't drink coffee ever, so I don't think I struggle with like the ups and downs that some
Huh.
people do with like caffeine dipping and energy levels. And so I think that where my diet was before, I don't think I'm going to come out like revolutionized about carnivore, but my husband is doing it. And I will say, I don't actually drink very much either. And my husband loves a good drink. And so I'll be really interested. Yeah, I'll be really interested to see how he feels when we get done with it, because I do think he's removing some of the more things that obviously affect people in negative ways. He loves coffee. He loves to wake up in the morning and drink coffee. And so I think it'll be interesting to see my perspective versus his at the end of this, I guess.
Sounds like my kind of guy, by the way.
Yeah.
Good on it. I
Everyone
like
loves my husband. He's the more fun one for sure.
it. I brought up the pops that in Europe, because there's so many breweries now everywhere you go in the US, and I would challenge anybody to drink like a good brewed beer where somebody took some time to make this. There's a brewery in Des Moines. I live in Iowa. There's a brewery called Big Grove, and they make this beer called Citrus Surfer. It's so good. It's fantastic. We had a business dinner last night, so I had just a couple, but I act like I drink all the time now, and that's far from me too. I barely drink anymore these days, but either way, it's a really good beer versus a Coors Light that's mass produced, and they manufacture the heck out of these things. It's sort of similar to where I would challenge somebody to eat your beef for a couple of days, or eat processed pizza, a bag of Doritos, some donuts. Guess what, folks? You're going to feel like crap, when you eat like that. And that's just like a no-brainer. And we're like, our food is killing us. Everything's killing us. It's like, well, is it? Or you just stop? We're not meant to live off Doritos and Coca-Cola and all these things that we just throw into our system. So that's the part that I think we're all missing.
Yeah, it's the nuance. We're missing.
Nuance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. Like, again, I can say that, we don't have to get rid of fast foods to be a healthy nation. While also still believing that like there are differences in foods of the spectrum, right? Like even the food. So we live. I'm outside of a town of 2,000, and I'm an hour and a half from a Walmart or a Target, and I'm 3 hours from a Costco or a Whole Foods, right? So I'm shopping a little grocery store, except for about once a month, I'll try and drive the hour and a half to go to like a Sam's Club to shop, or like a Hy-Vee, which are, going to be like middle of the road grocery stores. Is the blueberries I get at my little grocery store different than if I were to go to a U-Pick farm and pick blueberries? Absolutely. Like, because you have transportation in there, you have like the cooling, you have how long it's been picked from the field to where it's delivered. Like, there's a lot of things that obviously go into the food system that make the U-Pick blueberry taste a lot better than the blueberry I get at the grocery store. But again, to say that in order to live a healthy diet and a healthy lifestyle, everyone needs to be at a U-Pick and everyone needs to avoid a fast food, like, I think you're missing the point. A lot of it is in balance, and a lot of it is in, regulation and moderation, and a lot of it is just in general whole foods, whether the blueberry is at my tiny grocery store or at the U-Pick. Like, it's going to have the same nutritional value for the most part, but yeah, it's going to look different. It's probably going to taste a little bit different, and it's like, not going to be the ripest one. Like, there are difference between artisanal foods and, as you mentioned, mass-produced foods. There's difference between an artisanal beer and a mass-produced beer. But that doesn't mean that, like, we have to completely get rid of it and just live a society of, like, local shopping and farmers markets only in order to be healthy. Like, I just don't believe that's true. Like, I am living in rural Nebraska, and I feel like our family eats and lives very, very healthy, and I don't have a farmer's market near me and I don't have like the options some of these other people preach of being like, you have to go shop at a Whole Foods and these are the only foods you can eat. And if you're eating these other ones, you're like killing your family. Like that's, to me, that is just not true.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is maybe to wrap all this up. And somewhere in here, I want to get this quote in there because this is like one of my favorite quotes. And I'm a huge Willie Nelson fan. So I have a bunch of his vinyls, and he has this quote that says, everything in moderation, including moderation. Yeah. And so it's so true. And I think, fear maybe runs our lives a little bit more than we think. And so we get scared when we hear all this stuff that there's these red dyes and yellow dyes in our food. And, what we're eating is going to kill us, and glyphosate, and Trump, another story I didn't get to, but Trump took out the corn syrup and Coca-Cola. So now all of a sudden it's healthy for you. It's like, no, it's not, folks. There's still a ton of sugar in it. Stop drinking. The Coke is not good. In moderation, it's probably okay, but everything in moderation, including moderation. But fear sort of runs our lives. And it's like the most anti-Christian thing to do, by the way, is to be scared. Don't be scared. Be brave. Be courageous. In fact, there's something else that I read the other day that we tend to tell our kids, like, okay, see you later. Be careful. Like, we're not supposed. I caught myself doing that. I'm like, I don't want to tell them to be careful anymore. I want them to be, be aware. But I'm like, be brave, be courageous. Don't be careless, but don't be careful. Because the death rate, the last I checked anyway, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think everybody dies. Right?
Yeah.
I think it's going to happen to all of us. So, we can run around and think, oh, get all this information in our brains. And I think maybe the moral of the story here is, seriously, and I'm not blowing smoke here, check out your podcast. Check out, what is it? Discover Ag.
Discover Ag.
The Discos. Because you guys make really well-educated, lighthearted discussion on these super heavy topics it makes it more, consumable for a guy like me that wasn't the top of his class to graduate and just can relate and understand. And I'm definitely going to be a listener. I can't wait to listen to more. I should have done a little bit more research, but yeah, it's really good stuff. I'm serious too.
No,
so
thank you.
Congrats on that.
I appreciate it. At the end of the day, that's all we try and do is just have fun and learn a little few things about some of the trending headlines. And we cover food. We say agriculture, obviously, but it's basically food and Western culture. And yes, through the pop culture lens. So I'm glad to hear that you understand and connect to our mission, because that's the goal at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I told you I'm not the demographic typically, but
Listen, anyone can disco.
Anybody can disco. This is true. I was sort of a product of the 80s, so I can get the reference. And tell everybody I think I read you're going to the Farm Progress show here in a couple of weeks. Is that right? Do you guys have a booth set up?
Yeah, we will be venturing over there for that, which will always be fun. We're giving a keynote. So we're doing a little speaking over there, recording some podcasts. It should be a lot of fun.
That's huge, by the way. Congrats.
Yeah,
I need to learn from you guys on how to continue to grow it. It's awesome what you guys are doing. I'm a huge fan, and I cannot wait to listen to more. And tell everybody how to watch the podcast, where to find you, find out more information.
Yep. So we are available on all podcasting platforms. As we mentioned a couple different times now, our podcast is called Discover Ag. Our cover is two girls in denim head to toe. We got denim tuxedos on, and I'm holding a chicken and my co-host is holding a hot dog. So when you get to that photo, you have found your new home. That is your new home. And then we're on YouTube as well, Discover Ag, and different social platforms. All of it's under Discover Ag. So if anything of it interests, one, you're drawn to one platform or the other, we're probably on there. So just look for Discover Ag. And then I'm personally at Natalie Kovarik, again, on a few different platforms, just under my name.
Appreciate you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for doing this.
Hey, folks, thanks for tuning into the Germinate podcast. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others in the industry. And join me next time as we continue to explore the innovations and strategies shaping the future of agriculture and business. Until then, keep growing, keep innovating, and keep germinating your success.